your week.
All right. Good morning and welcome to Wednesday Morning Live. We are talking families again. Going to talk a topic that is near and dear to my heart. Probably not something that I'm really great at, but it's very important. I know that my dad raised me with knowing about finances and tithes and being able to designate the money that we make. And so we're going to talk about that today.
Being a good steward.
Yeah, that's it. And one thing that my dad said to me a long time ago, he said it's biblical that parents leave funds to their grandchildren. And I was like, man, what about me? Don't bypass me. And so I'm going to read a verse, and we're just going to dive in. We're going to try to be very practical today and just talk through some very simple ways and maybe even give you guys some resources to be able to use with your kids. But Proverbs chapter 13, verse 22 says, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, but the sinner's wealth is laid up for the righteous. This obviously is a verse that my dad was referring to. And Mark, I know your grandfather, he lived on a pastor's salary, which years ago was, just meager.
Yeah, he turned down a lot of raises because he wanted to make like what the average was in his church. Yeah. And his church was rather large, and so they wanted to pay him more. Anyways, a couple months ago, he actually reached out to me, and he wanted my Social Security, which I was like, why do you need my Social Security? Yeah. I don't think, who have you been on the phone with, Papa? But it was because he was trying to live this verse out, and he wanted to set up his will, like make sure his grandkids got something, which my take on this verse is not like you skip your kids. It's when you're righteous and you do what's right with your money, you should have enough when you get to the end of your life that you're able to not only bless your kids, but also your grandkids. Which, of course, those of us who are grandchildren are super grateful for that.
Absolutely, right? Because it skips.
But in order to do that, you have to be really wise with your money. Because how many people do we know who, man, it's hard enough to put food on the table now, much less to think about providing something for my kids of substance when I leave. If we're not careful, we leave debt to our children.
Yeah.
We leave real negative assets instead of...
Yeah, and I was even talking to some gentlemen. They were joking around, but they made the statement, when I pass, I want the debtors to be over top of my grave saying, you dirty dog, right. How could you leave so much debt? Right. I know they were joking, but that really is the mentality that a lot of individuals live in America. We rack up so much debt, and we're so far in that we don't know how to get out of it. So we just want to give you some practical points.
And on that, before we even jump in, I do want to say there's good debt. Like, I am probably going to leave my son debt, but in the form of mortgages on rental properties.
Right.
Like, you know what I'm saying? So
if he got in a bind, he could get out.
Right, exactly. He's still got a net positive cash flow or a net positive equity position. And so it's understanding how to use money. We don't worship money. Over and over when we come to church, Christians for 2,000 years have given money away. Mm-hmm. Like we give our tithes and offerings, and then the church should be giving money away, resources away, not only to missionaries, but to nonprofits around the corner that are doing good work. Why? Because we don't let money dictate what we do. We tell money what to do. And when we have the right relationship with money, sorry y'all, I lost my voice at camp last week, so I'm hoping I have it back by Sunday. But I am passionate about this topic. I think too many Christians view money either as the thing we worship and it means more than everything, or it's we don't want to talk about money. It's a tool, man. It's amoral. You can use it for right, you can use it for wrong, it can captivate your heart. Anyways.
And I think the thing that I hear a lot of people say is, well, the reason that I give to the church is I give out of joyful, and so I'm going to give an amount that I'm happy about giving. And that, to me, is not even scriptural.
Right.
Because that is now putting stipulations on.
I'll give till it's uncomfortable.
Right.
I'll give what I think is generous.
Right. And yes, we do need to be joyful in our giving, but it comes back to having good practices with managing our finances,
right,
and having the resources. I love what Dave Ramsey says. He always says, I live like nobody else today so that I can live like nobody else tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Look, I've been laughed at for ordering water and no food while hanging out with friends, just to be able to save that money. But whenever I got engaged, paid cash for the ring, bought our first house when we were very young. Mm-hmm. I know that you're the same way. And it's not that we were raised, neither one of us
Kevin and I drive old Hondas, okay? Yes. We drive beat up Hondas. And like, well, he has a truck and I have a truck, but like most of the time we're driving gas-sipping little Hondas with over 200,000 miles.
We don't fit in real well.
Right, yeah, Kev, when he gets out of his car, man, you think the car's like, needs new shocks. Like,
comes up.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with my weight, by the way.
Right.
But what are some practical tips that we can give? And once again, I'm going by what I learned from individuals making very meager. I mean, they would be laughed at for how little they made, but yet they have retired today comfortably.
Yeah, and they don't have to work. They choose what they want to do. And that, by the way, that's the point of retirement. The point of retirement is not just not having to work. It's getting to do what you want. So some of us are still going to work because we love what we're doing.
Right.
Whether it's ministry related or, man, you just love sales or you just love working with kids. Your goal with money is to not let money tell you have to work here, you have to live here, you have to drive this.
Right.
And not to be dictated by it. So a couple of principles that Kevin's already mentioned. When I think of money in terms of kids, like I'm now raising a son, I talk with my wife often about he's going to have it at least as hard as we had it, even though like we can probably afford to spoil him a little bit more.
And what we hear today in society is, I don't want my kids to have it as bad as I had it.
Right, and that's what made you tough,
right.
Man. You know, like hard times make good men, and then good men make easy times, and easy times make soft men. You know that long quote, how it goes. And it's true. Like, what made you good with money was probably you having to, I've told this story 100 times. When my mom was raising me, she was a single mom, and she tells me that there was a whole season of life where when she would balance the checkbook, if everything went exactly right, she'd have like $2 left every month. That was if everything, no flat tire, no oil change, no like everything. And so like there was some people she worked with who were really generous and would pay for her to get her nails done because they knew she couldn't even budget that. Like she just, you know. Mm-hmm. So we learned that because your dad is the same way.
Yeah, and to go along with that, there was nothing in the budget to stop us. And this is just a practical. There was nothing in the budget to stop at 7-Eleven and grab a big gulp and a canned drink and a snack, which is just...
Which I love those memes that are like, man, if you'd stop getting that $5 Starbucks every day, you'll be a millionaire. Okay, it's not that simple.
Right.
It's $5 a week is not going to mean that you save $1 million in 5 years. But in 30 years, if you create principles...
Yeah, it's a practice. It's a practice. It's a standard that we set forth for ourselves. Right. And if we can teach that to our kids...
100%. If your kids see you just dropping money at anytime you want some, and that's the real deal here. You've all seen that study where they put a marshmallow in front of the child, and the child that can say no and like have self-control, that's the child that's often going to have better grades, do better athletically, be better with money because they've learned how to say no to what's comfortable now and put in the work or the pain or whatever it is to grow. So,
and how do we say no? Like or how do we teach kids to say no?
We have to be saying no to ourselves.
Yeah.
I've had a child for 4 months, so I know nothing about raising a child. But I do know something about saying no and living below your means. And when my wife and I first got married, it was tight. Like we were at like 100% of our income. It took every dime we made. But as we got raises, as we got more comfortable, as we made more money, and I got out of college, we paid off college debt, suddenly you have a choice. Does your lifestyle go up with your income? Well, I can technically afford a $200,000 house. Now, I remember when guys, $200,000 used to be a really nice house in this area. Like, I remember thinking like, wow, people who lived in 200 now.
Yeah, show my age. My first house was $80,000.
Which good
in
for
this
you.
area.
Good for you. Like
it worked out great.
I remember when
God blessed us.
He got married a few years before me, and I remember when he bought his house. I was so jealous because when we bought our house, the market had just like taken this turn, and suddenly houses like his were like 150, and I was like, oh man, I should have gotten out of school earlier. I should have, and I had all these regrets. But over the course of time, you make wise decisions. You catch up. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's teaching ourselves to say no to what we want immediately. And Sue even said it a couple weeks ago. If we can just wait that week, wait that 7
I like what
wait
she
that
said
24
that day.
hours, whatever it is.
Often she didn't even want it. She'd save up cash to buy that RV or that car, and by the time they'd saved up the cash, she was like,
there was something else that they needed or felt was a better.
And she's like, it lost its luster. I remember when the Ford Bronco came out a few months ago. I was just looking at videos like, this thing is awesome. Which I can't afford that car, but like, if I had the money to do it, I might have done it.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, it's another new, like now Tesla's coming out with a truck. Now everybody's got their new thing. So often saying no not only helps us save money, it helps us realize that momentary need really was a want.
So teaching our kids no, it's not a long-term no, but it's the no of right now. I can get to the house and there are drinks at the house and they are already paid for it, and we bought it in a 24 pack.
Which we're not
for
judging you if
$2.
you stop at 7-Eleven. Like, that can be your thing. Everybody needs their thing, but everything can't be your thing.
Right.
You can't, none of us can afford to have the best house, the best car, the best vacation, the best everything, the best clothes. Like, you're eventually going to run out of money unless you are just independently wealthy and invested in Bitcoin 15 years ago. I don't know. Like,
and good for you if you did, man.
Yeah.
Way to see the market coming.
Which it hit 30,000 today, and people are freaking out. It was 10,000 last year. Yes, it was 60,000. Anyways, there's so many ways you can go with this, but I like what you're saying. Don't let your lifestyle creep. But what Kevin, I want to brag on Kevin. He teaches his kids about money by, yes, showing them how, but then he gives, like, when his kids earn money, he lets them spend their money. He doesn't just throw it all in a savings bank. And you were telling me at Christmas, or maybe it was Beth, your kids have started buying each other gifts. Mm-hmm. And so I think it was Brenna, I believe it was, she breaks out her piggy bank and she's got like $7 and she's going Christmas shopping for Bailey. And she loves her big sister Bailey and she loves Caleb. And she's like, I want to get them something really nice. And so she grabs this thing and she goes to the register and your wife's like, okay, all right. And Brenna thought this thing was like 75 cents or like $1 at most. And then she finds out that it was $5 because I think they were at 5 and below.
Yeah, we talk through it to our kids, so it's not like we just let them go do this.
Right.
Thing, but we try to explain to them, like, it costs this much, you're going to have this much left. But
and she gets up there and she's like, I want this for Bailey. And she's like, Brenna, this is like 5 of your $7 or whatever it was. Yeah. And Brenna was like, oh, no way. No. Like,
walk away.
It started making sense to her. Like, this is all my money. I can't buy a gift for anybody else. And that's like funny. But this is a big moment for her. How old's Brenna? 6?
7. Yeah.
7. So that's probably like the first Christmas where she's really starting to think like, shoot, money doesn't go as far.
It's not easy, yeah.
Yeah.
And on our way in today, look, I've got this Panera coffee. It's been free now for 9 months. I'll tell you more about it if you want to know. Ask me.
We have worked out a scam where we keep getting free coffee from Panera, and it is awesome.
Yeah, Panera, thank you.
This podcast was brought to you by our friends at Panera.
With the free coffee. But we stopped at the drive-thru for Burger King, and the Burger King has an app, and by the way, their deals are incredible for breakfast.
So Kevin went and got his free coffee from Panera and said no to the food there.
That's right.
And
drove to Burger King, $5, fed my whole family.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. But my daughter asked again, Brenna, she said, Dad, how did you pay for it, or do you have to pay for it? And I said, I paid for it on the app. And she said, oh, well, how does that work? And so I had the opportunity to talk to her. And
I just need to download more apps?
Yeah, right. And she even said, so while we were at Panera, you paid for Burger King? So there's no concept there, but the idea of bringing it in. And man, our parenting podcast, or our parenting small group, by the way, I have heard so many incredible parent stories of what they've done, so you need to join in on that.
Hey, is this a moment to plug?
Let's do it.
I had this book on the table. We had men's group last night, and it was incredible. I missed week 1. I was out of town, so week 2 last night, and we went through chapters 1 and 2 of The Disciplines of a Godly Man. If you're a gentleman watching this and you're not in a group, you need to go to our Saturday men's group or our Monday men's group. Yes. Both are studying through this book.
Absolutely.
It's been incredible. Parenting group.
Yep.
Men's group. All of our groups are available
Ladies
online.
Groups, there's groups everywhere. Yeah, check it out.
We're working in commercials for Panera.
Groups.
Yeah. We're working in commercials for Panera, for groups.
But hearing what parents do with their kids to be able to see how money is spent and how money is used. We even had an individual a while back. They allowed their kids to pay for the electric bill, water bill, so on and so forth.
I need to invite their kids over.
Through writing a check.
Yeah.
They just pulled it out, let them see it.
Oh, I see.
And they paid for it, obviously.
Gotcha.
But the kids got to write the check, and they realized, wow, it costs to live.
Yeah, that's why we shut the door when we go outside,
Right, and that's why we turn off lights, and that's why we do all these things. So it's teaching our kids practical, but I also like what Dave Ramsey says. There's nothing better than being able to help somebody who can't help themselves in a situation.
Yeah.
And there have been times that my wife and I have not been able to, and right now there's still times that we're not able to help the way that we want to. But we have opportunities to be able to give a little bit more to somebody who may be in need. And there are hard times that we all come on. And when you got kids, man, expenses just run out the roof.
We are still getting bills for Judah's birth, and he is about to turn 6 months old. He's 5 months old, about to turn 6 months.
And you thought you had good insurance.
I feel like I do, but every time I turn around, this wasn't.
I'm sorry, you feel like you have good insurance.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
It's got me questioning everything.
Right.
Yeah.
And that goes back to what your mom did, budgeting it out where she had a couple dollars left. But if anything goes wrong, it throws that whole skew out.
And then what do? We say budgeting doesn't work.
Yep.
And we give up and we just get in debt.
Right, and if we have those 2 months where we set aside that $4 a month or
I
whatever,
know, yeah.
the $50 a month, whatever it is that we're designating to set aside.
Start small.
Yeah, start small and then build up, you know. As you get raises, I love what Lewis said. He didn't take a raise for the past, I think it was 5 years before retirement. He just took the raise and put it right into his retirement immediately. Yeah. I mean, that's brilliant, and live the same means.
I remember the first time I went over. I've worked with Lewis for years, and so he was a driver at FedEx. Now he's retired. And I remember the first time I went over his house. There's a lot of drivers in where I work at FedEx. Man, as soon as they can, they get a 3,000 square foot house. Mm-hmm. And it was very apparent that Lewis and Judy, they had raised their kids in this house. It was now big enough for them, but it was nowhere near the size most guys that I work with spend on their houses. And Lewis was like, "This is all we need." Yeah. And you know what? That gives them the freedom. Stress. That's right. Yeah, way less stress. They get the freedom to travel when they want. When they need a new truck, they get a new truck. Yeah. Or they like to camp. They go RVing. So by keeping our expenses low, it also frees us up to be more generous, but also to have more time. So letting your kids be involved is super important. And I think the problem most of us have with money is, like I said earlier, we either worship it or we don't want to talk about it. And, you know, I'm going to be very, very careful to make sure I do talk about money with my son. Not that I want him to grow up and just be good with money. Mm-hmm. I don't want my son to grow up and be good with money but not know the Lord. Be really, really wise financially, but, man, have no morals or character. I want to teach him what a tool money is to be able to be generous, as Kevin said, and to be able to set you up to be generous with your time. That's not we think often, well, if somebody has a need, I just can pay for it. Well, sometimes people just need your time. Mm-hmm. And if all you're doing is making money and spending every amount of time you free up on yourself or your family or you making more money, I want you to be able to say, no, I don't need to work 55 hours a week. Because there are people that need my time. Yeah. Your family, number one.
Yes.
I mean, 100%.
Your kids are not going to remember how many hours you spent at the office and how much money you made. They're going to remember the time that you spent with them.
So my wife and I, we lived below our means for years. Every piece of property we bought, we never sold. We'd always rent it out. So by the time we were in our early 30s, we had 4 rental properties, and we hadn't had children yet. And now that we have a child, we made a determined effort, and Casey's not really going back to full-time work right now. She's working part-time for my mom, who's a realtor, but my wife's not teaching, and I don't know that she'll teach next year, the year after, or the year after. I don't know when she'll go back to full-time. Geez, raising that baby is full-time for sure. But that's a decision we got to make because for 14 years before we had Judah, we kept making, I'm not bragging, just wise decisions. Mm-hmm. We never moved into the most house we could afford.
Yeah. And I would like to say, Judah was a miracle baby. And so it wasn't that they wanted to wait 14 years to have a child, but it was what God intended, and they're going to be able. But I would say to those who had children early on, my wife and I, 5 years in, we had our first child, and look, money's tight. We got 4 kids. There's months where we just have to say no extras. We're not doing anything extra. We gotta save this month, and not that we don't have it in the savings, but because we're not going to dip into our savings for fun and leisure. We're going to dip into our savings for emergencies. So it's going through the tight and sitting down with the budget and figuring it out. And I'll
brag on Kevin, what Kevin does too. Some of this is being a man. So we'll talk to the men right now. There's a Bible verse that talks about what good is your faith if you won't provide for your own family? And it's extended there. It's even talking about extended family and not people who abuse you and just take money and run with it, but providing for the needs of your family, even the widows in your family. Don't just expect the church to do it. We should be providing for our own. And so Kevin will work at the church, he'll work outside the church, and he'll put in lots of hours so that his wife can spend time with their children. And some of this is just us as men saying, hey, if there's a season where my kids are young and we can't both be home, I'm going to be the one to take it on my shoulders. Now, I know that sometimes the wife is the breadwinner. Yeah. Sometimes the wife has multiple degrees and she can actually make more with less time than the husband. And you've got to have those. But here's the thing. Ultimately, the Bible makes clear the responsibility is on us. If the family's not getting fed, I shouldn't be like, babe, what's the problem? What's the deal? This is us. And I know that some of you watching, your wife is the one that handles the checkbook. That's fine. If your wife is more sound in her judgment with finances, that's cool. That's 100% great. But here's the deal. we have to make sure that we're teaching our kids not just, hey, go to mom and talk about money. I need to have a good understanding of budgets, of money. And speaking of budgets, like, this isn't just true of like our personal lives. We mark up the church budget every year. We're at the 6-month window, and we're constantly looking for areas to save and be better. And here's why. Every year we have a 10% savings rate built into our budget. And what that means is this. We look at the year before and we say, here's what the church had come in through tithes, through offerings, through real estate rental, like our neighbors next door in Fastenal, or events that bring money into the church. Here's what came in. And then we knock that down by 10% and we say, we're going to budget next year as if only 90% comes in. Now, we know that every year, for the last 5 years, our giving has grown every year. And so what happens is we have a 10% savings rate built in, but then our tithes and offerings usually grow. So most years, we're able to save 15, 20, 25%. What does that do? That frees us up to be generous. When that missionary couple came through a few weeks ago, we didn't need to have a meeting about it. We just said, hey guys, we're going to put you in our budget because we know we have room, and we're going to send a check to your missionary account. Why? Because we have built in so much margin around here that when God gives us an opportunity, whether it's to bless a missionary outside our doors, or like right now, we're looking at expanding to the upstairs of this building. We're not going to have to do a whole lot of capital fundraising for that. We have the funds. Why? Because we build in. And this is just so practical for every one of us. If you just took your budget and said, last year, between the two of us, we made $67,000 before taxes. So next year, we're going to budget on us making $58,000 or whatever 10% of that would be. And then lo and behold, you get a bonus next year. You earn some side income. And you now have way more margin if you can live in the budget. That's part of it too, not just making the budget. This is why we have budget meetings around here. You got to live according to the budget.
Yeah.
And so we're constantly saying, hey, why did this group go over budget? Why did this team go over budget? And there's often good reasons. We just need to know. So,
and I would like to say, he mentioned, he just threw out a number, but I've watched individuals talk about how tight it is to live, and I know what a lot of individuals have lived on, close friends of mine, and I know what a lot of single moms, around about what you make and what you.
They'll share with us, yeah.
And I want to say, it's not impossible to live on little. It's not fun. It's not as much fun. It can be stressful. But I even remember whenever my wife and we moved to Indiana. We had 2 kids while we were in Indiana. I was guaranteed part-time hours, and that was it. And so we did our budget.
Is that 30 at FedEx? Is that 30?
Oh, no, 17. Oh, hours? Yeah, 17 and a half hours.
Really?
Yeah.
Where we are, it's up to 30 now because of the healthcare thing.
It was during the slow time, the economy and all that.
Rough.
Yeah, so 17 and a half hours, and then my wife couldn't get a job teaching because of some other things that were going on. And so we were, it was tight.
Because this is right in the crash. This is like 8, 9, 10, somewhere around there.
Right, 2008, 2009, 2010.
Yeah, rough times.
Yeah, so we sat down to budget, and I still brag on my wife for this. We went through our whole budget, and we had a few dollars left at the end, and she said, we forgot one thing, and that's tithes, and the 10%. And she went right back and put 10% at the top, which obviously threw off our whole budget. And I was
Lord's so good at that.
There it goes, yeah. But man, I got more side work, and we had more people call out at FedEx, and I'd take every hour I could get, and we never went without.
I got a similar story at FedEx years ago. It was my second job. I had another job at night that I was making $14 an hour, and back then FedEx was only paying me $10. It was part-time. I couldn't afford to give up the $14 an hour job, but we were starting the church in Suffolk. This is like 2007, so 14 years ago. And I prayed about it, and I was like, I need more rest. I need to be at home with my wife at night. It makes sense for me to work at the 5 a.m. FedEx job, but I'm not making as much. So I prayed, Lord, I know you'll provide. And I quit the nighttime job where I was making, I think it was $14.50, and I held on to the $10 an hour job, which was like, oh. And that $4 an hour, man, that was everything,
Yeah, that's a lot.
And this is before FedEx offered me benefits. And a week later, my GM, not just my supervisor, my GM calls me. He's like, Mark, I know you're a new dock worker here. So we just got a memo from corporate. Effectively, immediately, all dock workers are going from $10 an hour. And I can't remember if it was exactly $14.50 or 14 even. He's like, but by the end of the year, it'll be over that. And I just laughed. And he was a believer. I was like, man, this is so God. Like, I just quit this job, and I have never quit or walked away from something or turned down an opportunity to make money or given to the Lord and Him not be faithful. Now, there have been tight times. I'm not saying that I found a Mercedes in my driveway the next day and I live in a mansion. None of those things are true. Like, that's the prosperity gospel, which is total bunk. But I have found that I can depend on the Lord. And that's another part of this that I think we need to teach our kids. I say this not even like my son is, again, 4 months, 5 months old. But our kids do need to see a little bit of the struggle and know that, like, you can depend on the Lord. And so I'm going to tell my son often about how we depended on the Lord, and he's a miracle, and how God has come through financially, and how you can trust God with your money, with your biggest life problems, and that's why we give so freely. Yeah.
And I think, talking about kids, our kids through the summer have lots of opportunities, and your kids do too, to be involved in everything. But everything costs money.
Yeah, and it costs more than ever.
And we are invited by every leader to be a part of this and be a part of that. And we look at the price tag, and I've sent several emails, texts, phone calls of, we already have our summer planned out, and yes, we can afford this, but it's not something we're going to do at this time. But then I will sit down with my kids and say, look, I know that you had a desire to do this, but I want you to realize that you have siblings, and if I were to spend this much on every single kid, I just do the math real quick. We'll be spending $1,200 for this 1 week, and we don't have that kind of income coming in. And my kids get it, but that's a hard conversation as a man.
Parents feel like that conversation, like, oh no, your kids must think you're poor. Oh no, Kevin's kids might have a good grasp on money. Like,
hopefully.
I don't want my son to turn 21 and just think money grows on trees.
Right.
I want him to have to sit down, what does that Bible verse say, and count the cost. And really, not just of discipleship, but count the cost of everything.
Yeah.
And if we can raise sons and daughters who count the cost financially, count the cost morally of the decision they're going to make, of the person they're going to date.
Because, man, these phones right here,
Dude.
if I had this growing up, good night. And if we can teach the kids financial morals and spiritual morals and just life morals, it will help them as they get these devices and as they get on the internet and as they do their tablets and all these things. It's knowing how to handle this.
Knowing that what you sow, you will reap. Like, if you sow wise decisions financially, you will reap. There'll be some weeds. There'll be some issues. If you sow wisdom in how you look at things, what you allow in.
Right.
This is all, like, it's all the same stuff, y'all. If you want to get fit, you got to go to the gym. If you want to save money, you got to live on a budget. Like, it's all self-control and saying no. And this is part of being a healthy Christian. Go ahead.
And it just goes right back to what the proverb says. A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, but the sinner's wealth is laid up for the righteous. It's important to parent your children well with wisdom and guidance. And that's in every aspect, not just finances. We need to be wise. There is a resource, RamseySolutions.com. It has Kids Financial Peace University, Financial Peace University Junior. Right now it's on clearance for $20. I would recommend that. My sister has used it. And we do similar things with our children. But if you don't have an idea of how to do this, you need to find some help, and that'd be a great resource to take advantage of.
Most things, like we say, it's just talking to your kids about it. We want our parents to talk to their kids about faith. We want our parents to talk to their kids about their tablet, their phone. Don't just assume that your kid's going to figure life out.
Yeah.
Make a decision to help them. And if you say, well, I've got a terrible track record with money, well, then work on it. Say, I've got a terrible track record with faith. I got saved late in life. Okay, but you're growing now. Like, don't give yourself a pass and say, well, someone else needs to. I am not going to bring my son to church once a week and assume that Miss Shannon, Mr. Pete, Mr. Frank, Miss Jeanette, that they're going to raise my son spiritually. That's on me.
Right.
And I don't assume that his school is going to teach him all that he needs to know about morality, about finances, about self-control, about using his words wisely. That is on me. And so I want you to be encouraged that there are more resources than ever.
Yeah.
The things that are out there now, I listen to a podcast called Bigger Pockets, and that has really helped me with making decisions around rental property. Guys, when I started buying rental property, there weren't podcasts. Now I have more information than I have time to act on my real estate stuff. You can find information. There are literally thousands of podcasts by everybody who knows everything about money, and everybody does know everything, just like I know everything. Kevin knows everything. We all know everything. And our point is not to get you to know everything. It's to get you to know enough to do something. And so I want you to feel confident enough to talk with your kids about budgeting, about why it is, and this is a big one, why it is that we give at church. So for the last year, our church has had offering plates at the back. Before that, we've been a plate passing church. We're going to get back to passing the plates. We're still in the middle of rebuilding our guest services team. They have done a great job,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
we've got more rows than ever because of how spread out the seats are. So passing the plates is coming back, and when it does, one of the issues I have is that right now I give automatically. So on a Sunday to Sunday, you're not going to actually see me put anything in the plate. And so I'm probably going to try to figure out a way for us to do cards or something where even people who give online can put, because it's important for your children to see you give and have a conversation about like, hey, you know that money we talk about and how you're always wanting to spend it? We also give it away. We also make a sacrifice because this is important to us, and we don't just talk about faith. We put our money where our mouth is. So yeah, a lot of different ways to take today's topic, but my encouragement is this. You may not be in a position where you can leave something to your grandkids right now, but you've still got breath in your lungs. Mm-hmm. You can make some wise decisions, and not everybody's going to leave millions, thousands, or even hundreds of dollars to their grandkids.
It doesn't give you an amount.
That's right.
It just says let's leave something.
Right.
And every person, I've said this all the time, I believe that if God were to bless me with money, I would probably become so selfish with it. Whereas I know a lot of people who God has blessed with money, and man, they just give. And so there's some of you here today who are like, man, if I give it away, God will bless me. No. That's not it. It's setting up practical standards in your life on how to manage the resources. Yeah. And that's car, that's house, that's clothes, that's all items. Manage the resources that God has blessed me with, and go from there.
And I will say, like Kevin was talking about earlier, when he had to put that 10% back in his budget, tithing. I was raised tithing. Tithing forced my wife and I to think of, well, no matter what we make, we got to set this aside. And so when you begin setting aside 10% for giving, it's easier then to say, well, wait a minute, if I can set aside 10%, why can't I set aside 20% and give 10% to the church and then save 10% in our 401k or our health reimbursement account or our IRA? And then suddenly you begin to understand the principle of saving. Mm-hmm. And so tithing isn't just spiritual, it's very practical. And it's God's way of showing us you actually can live on less than you think, and now you're able to save, and then you're able to pull the trigger when a good opportunity comes your way, or an opportunity to invest in a business or a piece of real estate, or to make a wise investment. You have the resources available because you have been saving and you haven't been chasing lifestyle creep. And man, getting a hold of this in your 20s and 30s, if you're watching this and you've got kids, you still have so much runway. Mm-hmm. More of us are living longer than ever before. My wife's grandfather is in his mid-90s, and he made investments when he was in his 20s and 30s that are paying off with huge dividends. Why? Because it had multiple years of runway to really take off. A lot of you are probably going to live longer than your parents did. You're probably going to end up taking care of your parents, and you're going to need those wise investments. But you still have all this room to make wise decisions.
It's not too late.
That's right.
It's not too late. Start. Do something. Do something.
And if your kids are teenagers, it's still not too late to begin talking with them about this, because they're going to need this. They're going to go to college, and they're going to be 18 years old, and there's going to be a Visa rep who's going to hand them a credit card for signing up for a T-shirt, and is willing to give them a $2,000 or $5,000 limit. And if your kid doesn't know what that is, or how to deal with it, or they've never been taught about debt and all those issues, man, you've set them up for failure, and they're going to get out of school with school debt and personal debt. Yeah. You want more than that for your daughter, for your son. So have those conversations now.
Absolutely.
Find those resources.
Yeah. And let's start building to leave towards not just our kids, but our kids' kids.
That's right.
Because we want to be a generation that supports and gives. Guys, thank you for watching. I know it's been a little bit longer, but check out RamseySolutions.com. If you need help with those resources, talk to myself, talk to Pastor Mark. We have
I got something to plug.
Group. Do it.
We wrote a blog like 3 years about this on our church website. It's the 80-10-10 rule. How to get started, setting aside 10% for giving, 10% for myself, and 80%. We'll link that as well. We got
Outdoor.church/blog.
Yeah, we'll link all of that in the description too.
Okay. So, you guys have a great week. Teach those kids.
See ya.